Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, David Carr of Steward Your Business, bringing people together to accomplish great things. And this week, we have another fantastic guest, Aaron Mastny, who I've known for years, actually. I'm excited to have him on the podcast. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here. Really excited.
Absolutely.
Get into the
Absolutely.
conversation. Yeah.
Well, definitely. I mean, you and I have been through quite a bit over the years. You and I met through a mastermind called Wake Up Warrior back in the day, and have continued to be in connection. And I think I'm excited for our listeners to come in because we're going to have a conversation today that we really haven't delved into on the Business Roundtable podcast before. And again, I'm grateful to have you here because what I've titled this really is a way of understanding who you are. And Aaron, you've done a lot of work in this space and getting through a lot of traumatic experiences, quite honestly. And how do we show up with power, presence, and really living our full purpose? And so, Aaron, before we get into the meat of the conversation today, I want folks to know a little bit more about you, and your journey, and why do you do what you do today with Inner Alchemy?
Yeah, David, it was when we met, I guess it's been about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, in this men's group. And
Yep.
a lot of times I think as men, right, we feel isolated. We feel like we, especially in American culture, we need to do these things by ourselves and figure it out on our own. But what I was craving for at that time was connection with powerful men. And just a little bit of backstory about what happened previously. I had a team of 2,000 people, and my wife and I were the lead distributors of this company, but all of my income went away. So I lost all the income I had was gone. And I was like, wow, like I need to double down on myself. And so although I was like not making money, I jumped into a container that wasn't the cheapest. And what I realized was I started getting into this deep subconscious work, because although I'd been leading a lot of people, I realized like I could give someone medicine to fix their issue, but if they didn't think they're worthy of it, in a lot of ways we self-sabotage. So I started really diving deeper into subconscious reprogramming work. But even before that, I mean, what brought me to that place was, I used to be a heroin addict. I was addicted to pornography and sex, and I was addicted to gambling. And this is coming from my early 20s and in my teens. And it was driven by sexual trauma that I experienced growing up as a kid. And so in a lot of ways, when my best friend passed and I was at his funeral and I was speaking at his funeral, although I stopped being a heroin addict at that time, it didn't stop my shame. It didn't stop the stories of what I was making up. And so for the past 25 years, I just turned 50, just had a newborn baby. I'm just learning how to bring my attention back to myself and love all my parts.
Yeah. No, well, and that's so important. I hope everybody is listening. This is something that isn't just theory out there. This is something lived, and Aaron has lived it, and he's sharing with you. And that's why we have people on the Business Roundtable podcast. Quite honestly, Aaron, that I know personally have developed a relationship because I want folks to listen in and say, okay, this guy's gone through stuff. Now he's sharing and showing me a path forward where I might be stuck. Right? We want to help people avoid some of these mistakes and challenges that we've gone through. So
Yeah.
you mentioned, Aaron, this gone through quite a bit. How, talk a little bit about this, the price you paid, if you will, for trying to be somebody that you weren't. You were trying to do this. And again, I feel like a lot of people, maybe they're not heroin addicts, maybe, but we all have some kind of sedation. We have some kind of, whether it's, scrolling on the internet, the food, we alcohol, whatever it is, because we have trauma, we have pain. So talk a little bit about that for those folks that are like in that place, perhaps right now in some degree, before the clarity. We're going to get into the clarity about the breaking, but what? Because you and I were the same way. I came awake a boyer for another reasons. I wanted to improve my marriage, particularly at that point. But I wanted to, there was things that I were doing were not healthy. Talk a little bit about the guy that's stuck there right now.
Yeah, you break it up a little bit, David, but I think
Go ahead.
I got the gist. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So what I heard you saying, you're breaking up a little bit there, but walking through trauma,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, we have 8 billion people on our planet. Everyone has their own individual relationship with their experience, right?
Yep.
So what I've recognized and learned as, becoming a therapeutic coach and learning how to help people walk themselves back home to themselves, is really resolving mother, father wounds, generational trauma that came from our grandparents. And what happened was the core of it's really lack of feeling love or safety. And every time I experienced that pain, right, that pain got stored in my nervous system, my mind picked up a part to try to get away from that pain.
Yep.
Right. So some people have controller parts. Some people have people pleaser parts. Some people have avoider parts. We all have these different parts, and they happen when we're kids, not because they're bad, but because they wanted to try to get away from the underlying sensation that at that time when we were kids, we didn't know how to process it. We didn't have the capacity or capabilities to do so. So they say what happened to you when you were a child was not your fault. But as we get older, it is our responsibility to learn how to be with the parts of ourselves that in a lot of ways our mind is trying to get away from itself, which is very tricky. Let's call it tricky. Like, people talk about the ego, people talk about, the mind. In a lot of ways, the mind is designed to get away from the pain. And that's not bad, but that's what it becomes a very deeply unconscious habit that we're not aware of.
Right.
Yeah.
And Aaron, I mean, a little bit too. Some people, we're trying to get away from the pain, but we're trying to solve it we don't know the tools, like you said, we don't, especially when you're young, and then you kind of get used to the pain and you're staying in the pain, and it's like, wait, this isn't healthy. Talk a little bit about your journey from, where you finally were able to break free of that pain, Aaron. You're like, hey, I don't want to be experiencing this pain anymore. You said, I broke free of the heroin, but there were still some other areas of my life where there was still pain. Speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. I mean, they say statistically 7 out of 10 people are in a normalized stressed state. So most people don't even recognize or realize that they're in survival because, like you said, it's become normal. Right. So a lot of men like overachieving, or like, in the United States, like, oh, if I'm successful or I make the money. So we drive and strive to become successful. And then only to get to that point, and the pain is still there because we're driven by the trauma. Right. So I work with professional athletes. I work with billionaires, and they can't turn it off, not because they're bad. It's because it's so deeply embodied as a way of being. Okay.
Right.
And the mind will lie to you all day long. It'll tell you like, oh, if I do this thing, then I'll be loved and accepted. Now, that in a lot of ways, in my opinion, is a distortion. And that distortion is coming from trauma that is not being recognized. And it's hard that sometimes people don't even know. If I was adopted, I work with people that are adopted, very successful doctors and surgeons, and they don't remember the adoption. But I can tell you this, they absorbed that trauma, that feeling of rejection. And so you have men that are really angry and frustrated, or you have people that are like people pleasing and they're like overly emotional. So none of it's bad or wrong. It's just in a lot of ways, it just hasn't been identified properly.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do something from survival to get away from it, which keeps us stuck in a loop. It's like a cycle. We just keep staying in this cycle. Right.
Absolutely.
So like, yeah. So to kind of put it in perspective, one of my deepest traumas growing up was, I was teased and bullied for being Asian in an all white school down in South Jersey in the Pine Barrens. So I had like this deep insecurity of being loved and accepted. So I wanted to be loved and accepted. Right.
Sure.
One of my first friends all of a sudden became sexual towards me. Now, I didn't understand what was happening. I was confused, but my mother brought me up in a religious context of homosexuality was bad and wrong. So I didn't want to share that trauma. So I kept it a secret.
Yeah.
Okay. And then got into sports. I got into like overachieving. But again, I was being driven to get away from it. And then when I found things like heroin and alcohol and substances, all of a sudden that helped me to numb out my pain. Right. And so it wasn't until much later in life, even a couple of years ago when COVID hit and I was traveling the country with my wife, this guy reached out to me, the guy that was sexual towards me, and he apologized.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and so I actually met up with him in person, with him and his wife in Las Vegas. We went out to dinner and I said, "Hey, what happened? Were you sexually traumatized? Where'd you pick up that part?" And he goes, "No, actually, I wasn't abused by my parents." He goes, "What happened was a father sexually abused his son, and that son was sexual with all the kids in the neighborhood. So, and he was sexual towards me. So in a way, like, we picked up the part of that violation."
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden, that became one of my deepest wounds, being violated. So it's interesting, even in like the context of like doing like sales or like working with people, if I feel like I'm violating someone at the slight and they're uncomfortable, I kind of pull back and I go into a people pleaser part. Does that make sense?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So the key is we can never go the amount of love that we can, our loving awareness and attention, there's no limit to that. So even before this call today, I worked with another therapeutic coach because I felt like I'm at my next limit. I'm at my next plateau. We hit that next kind of block. And I noticed, like, I want to give myself away for free. I don't feel worthy of it. And I mapped it out, and boom, I got to be with that little kid today, that little wounded little boy. And I talked to him. And as I unpacked the emotions, he's like, "Hey, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Divine wisdom, intelligence."
Yes.
That was like a part of me, but I was robbing myself of not actually getting that lesson because I would avoid it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would
a
step
lot of
away.
us avoid
Yeah,
that. Yeah, you're right, Aaron. I mean, you're digging in, and that's again why I felt like I wanted to have you on here, because you're coaching people, but you're also being coached, just as I am too. It's
for
both
sure.
ways. It's right. It's
Yeah.
ongoing. All of us need that. We all have blind spots. I mean, and so when you say this is powerful, because why I want folks to listen in today, for me particularly, because I get to work with lots of different leaders and folks, but if there's this deep level of trauma, like you're saying, Aaron, we're always going to try to fill that hole in unhealthy ways if we're not conscious of it. Like you said, we're unconscious, we're asleep to it at some point, and we don't even realize how much there is. But talk a little bit about your journey then from suppression, and you're getting this breakthrough. You talked about just even today, this going back to your young self, but where you're like now, when you have that realization. And one of the things we have in our the warrior wake up warrior frame is stop lying and start telling the truth, right? So it's a way of like, hey, you're no longer defined by that guilt or that shame, but like you said, that moment of, that's not who I am anymore. That happened to me, but that's not who I am anymore, right, Aaron?
Right. Yeah. Well, so if you think about it, our different levels of consciousness is like different layers. And we all have a certain map. So in a lot of ways, when I work with someone, I map out their consciousness so they can make different connections.
Okay.
Now, in a lot of ways, my mind, your mind, as soon as like we start thinking about like a past negative experience, my mind will do everything it can to get away from it. So I have a very strong disassociative avoider part. I was diagnosed ADHD.
Oh yeah, I got that too. Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, life really comes down to where you put your attention and what is my intention, right?
Yep.
So my intention with this talk is to hopefully have someone hear this and be like, "Oh, wow, like, okay, Aaron was able to overcome his deep trauma. I can have the courage to do the same. And it doesn't have to be painful." The mind makes up a story, has fear of that pain,
Yes.
right? So when it comes down to it, we're either living in love or living in fear. Love and acceptance, or resistance, judgment, and fear. And the judgmental mind is my survival mind. That's my humanness. That's not a bad part, but in a lot of ways, that part prevents me from healing the deeper layers within myself. Because we judge. For me, I judge myself. That's
Oh
my
yeah.
wound.
Yep.
I'm like
Yep.
overly critical of myself. Some people have a
Yep.
wound of judging other people,
Oh
right? In a lot of
yes.
ways, we just picked up what was done to us from like, how were our parents judging? How was my mom judging? How was those judgments aren't even ours. They're beliefs that we absorbed.
Oh
So
yeah.
Yeah. So the first name of the game is to have awareness of the parts that are driving us, they're trying to help us, but at the same time they're creating certain negative states, or we might have negative experiences, or we have negative core beliefs. And those
Right?
beliefs, in a lot of ways, they picked up sensations and emotions that we're also trying to get away from. That doesn't allow us to process what happened.
Mhm,
We're,
mhm.
we're unconsciously trying to get away from our internal experience. And the addiction is, I want to get something external to, like you said before, fill the void.
Fill the void. So,
Yeah,
um,
feel
so so
or get mask the pain. Yeah.
I would imagine, Aaron, it takes, so if somebody finally can at least recognize, okay, I'm doing something unhealthy, it's not serving me, and then there's a lot the question of, okay, who do I trust? How? Because this is good. You obviously you're sharing some things you've done through a lot of trauma. You've done a lot of work. It doesn't have that stranglehold that it once did on you. But imagine,
Mm,
folks, like you said, there's a lot of guilt and shame with that's been unprocessed. And so what is your way, Aaron, of engaging somebody that says, okay, if they hear this and they're
mm,
like, man, I know, I recognize it, I'm not doing some things healthy, but I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, I'm opening the door to something, and now not a people, maybe I've never shared this before. Very few people know this about me. How do you get
Right.
into the room with a person like that, Aaron?
Yeah, so that's a great point. Um, because you meet people with where they're at,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
we talk about it in therapeutic coaching. We all have what's called a window of tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your mind and your body is very intelligent to try to keep you away from what you can't handle. That's why in like the psychedelic medicine world, sometimes people go into psychedelic medicine, it takes them directly into their trauma. It's too far, too
Mm-hmm.
fast. They bypass their protector parts, and they actually can become more traumatized if they're not careful. If they don't have a reference of what's going on internally. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So in the beginning, in a lot of ways, it's just getting to know the parts of yourself, right? So some of us have like a part, oh man, I don't like this part of myself. And oh, this part eats too much food. And oh, this
Mm-hmm.
part judges, right? We have all these different parts and layers of ourselves. So at the end of the day, it's finding out each one of them has a positive intention. So here's the trick. When you start getting to know the different parts of yourself and you can appreciate where they're coming from, meaning they're trying to help you have a different experience with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of judging it, which creates a negative experience, you actually have appreciation. You get to actually bring yourself, what I call, you're coming back into wholeness within yourself.
Mhm, mhm,
So in a lot of ways, when your part was born, it came from trauma, meaning lack of love or lack of safety, mother, father wounds, a lot of ways you picked up a part that got separated a long time ago, and that part thinks it needs to go get something to feel whole because it
mhm.
felt the separation when you were a kid. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So how do we do it? Well, first is recognizing what are these, because what your thoughts are, your beliefs aren't even real. Their thoughts are not real, but they create your felt experience that's in your body. It's in your nervous system.
Mhm.
So I teach a whole 12 module course based off of 17 years of trauma research on how to reset your nervous system. Because if you don't
Wow.
feel safe in your body, it doesn't matter what you tell yourself. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
right.
Like, so that's why everyone has really good psychoeducation. They can know and understand these things, they're concepts. But
Mhm.
until you learn to experience and feel safe in your nervous system, your
Right.
mind will be all over the place. So in a lot of ways, it's seeing that the mind is causing the issue, pausing the mind, and then bringing your loving attention and awareness back to what is calling forth your attention, which are the sensations. So we have feelings, but then we have feelings about the feelings. The feelings about the feelings are the interpretations of the feelings. In a lot of ways, is preventing us from actually healing.
Mm. It
And
sounds like
that's
we're almost, like, sabotaging ourselves, Aaron, like,
for
yeah,
sure. The humanness part of us is the
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 human
the
part is.
the human part of us, because that's what the human part is designed to do. The human part is designed to be in survival.
Mm. Mhm.
But if you sharing a belief of like there's a divine intelligence that
Mhm.
goes supersedes this body,
Yep.
all of a sudden you have a consciousness that to me is connected to divine source.
Yep.
You have a direct link to bringing your awareness to the part that's calling forth your attention. You can heal all of your trauma in your parts by bringing it to it and loving it and accepting it. But we have not been taught how to do that because we're conditioned to do the opposite. That's why the game is so difficult in the beginning.
Right. We're conditioned, just to figure it out on ourselves, lean only on our own understanding, like you're saying, Aaron. And we're wherever you are on your religious spectrum, I mean, if you think you're the end all be all of the answers, that to me is scary. Meaning that that I know all, I don't know, I don't know all things. I know that I'm limited in my understanding, like you said, Aaron. But if you believe that there's something beyond you, a divine source, God, I have that faith of my background, but something beyond you, then you can say, okay, well, then there's something that can come from, I can be transformed, right? You can take this, and it's not just limited to me, because if it's just limited to me, I feel like I'm in trouble.
Well, that's the opposite of connection, which is addiction, which is I'm by myself. I'm on my own. Like that's the ultimate. When I was suicidal, there's twice when I was, addicted to heroin, another time when I lost all my money and resources. I was in a Ponzi scheme with 26 friends and family, all my best clients. This is back in 2010. It brought me to my knees. And I was trying to people please a bully, which was my trauma. So I was and I was like, I was the ultimate victim. I was like, well, I gave him all this money and he, I didn't get what I wanted. Why did I do that? Because my mind made up a story that if I pleased this person, that would solve the internal problem. That was a major lesson.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I walked into a church and the scam artist that was there was sitting in the back of the church. And I ran into him 6 months after I started kind of recovery mode. And it was crazy because I looked at him. I'm like, what are you doing here? And he was like, oh, I'm trying to find God. I'm trying to find Jesus. And I'm like, bro, why don't you give me my money back? And here's the even crazier part. So we're sitting there in this church and the pastor starts telling a sermon and he starts telling our story. He goes, I know there's a scam artist out here. I know he took money and he did this. And I'm looking at this guy and he's looking at me and I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, did he confess to the pastor? That's why I thought I was like trying to be logical about it. So I went to the pastor afterwards. And I said, hey, did this guy tell your story? He's like, no. He's like, I was like, you're telling my story. He's like, that's what God was telling me to share. And then a week later, this guy, his name's Renegade Fox. You could look him up. Wasn't a very nice guy, but that was the first time I took responsibility. I'm like, he didn't steal from me. I was like, I actually gave him what I needed to do to have something so painful show up to bring me back to myself. Wow. And then so he asked me to forgive him and get baptized with him in the following week I used to live in North Beach, Miami, Florida, as an old Native American park. And so I said, I agreed to it, not for him. Wow. I agreed to it to forgive myself.
Yes.
For what I had done. Right. And so at the time I was married to another woman and I got home and it was her brother that died from the heroin addiction. She had never fully recovered from that. So she was drinking and we're deep in addiction. Anyway, she's like, where were you? What happened? And I was like, oh, I ran into Renegade at church. And she's like, well, did you kill him? Did you murder him? Because like in her mind and my mind too, he destroyed us. And I was like, I'm actually going to get baptized with him in the ocean next week. And she's like, what's wrong with you, dude? And I was like, I don't know, but I just have to let this go.
Yes.
And that was when I let it go. And when I say let it go, I mean, I had my car repoed. I had no money and I couldn't even borrow money, but I trusted God would take care of me. And it just got me to the next part. It's like, I was just grateful for my breath, grateful for that I could walk and I could talk. And I started rebuilding myself. But, these things are not accidents. Unconsciously, I was driven to address what was in myself. And until I faced it within myself, I created things externally to show me what was happening internally. It goes deep. It's really deep. Yeah. Really relationships deep. Are a great reflection. Yeah. Kids are a great reflection. I mean, life is going to reflect back to you where you're at.
Well, you've definitely come a long way. I mean, you've integrated, the masculine. I feel like you've included faith, spirituality, intuition, obedience, you've integrated these things and taking it from a place where you could have stayed in that pain and anger and victim and, hey, you did this to me. And I see a lot of people that do that. They go through life very angry, upset, and it almost becomes their identity to a degree. Right? It's like a almost I don't think they would say this, but if we really dug into it, it's a self-imposed prison. They put themselves in prison, and they have the key. There's a key to get unlocked. They can really like step out of that, but they like, no, I'm going to stay in this. This is mine. They hold on to it.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, which is in a lot of ways we get addicted to how we felt, the pain that we experienced as kids.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, you'll see this all the time. Someone chooses to be in an abusive relationship. Why do they choose to be in an abusive relationship? Everyone's like, what? He's hitting you, or she's hitting you, or they're abusing you. Why? And they don't even know why. They're like, but I can guarantee you, if I talk to that person and ask like, hey, where did you pick that up? What did you experience as a little kid?
Mm-hmm.
And they absorbed it as like, this was normal. Then they search it out because that's what their reference point is. They have no, that's why it's like, you tell like certain men, sometimes it's like, hey, just go love yourself. And they have a really strong controller part. They don't even know what that means. I mean, they're like, oh, go make more money.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, go be more successful. That's me loving myself, because that's their default of like, let me go get something to prove I'm worthy.
Mm-hmm.
What if you learned how to just actually bring your attention and actually give that directly to yourself as a habit,
right?
Instead of trying to get something to try to prove it. That's a
right.
distortion.
Because you said to me, like, for this gentleman, it wasn't for him. It was because, look, I'm submitting because it's better for me. I'm trying to get this deeper truth of who I am, yes, it's painful, but I recognize that this isn't. I knew I needed to do this and get in a healthier place. Because a lot of guys don't, like you said, they want to start performing, they want to do something else, and they're not willing to, submit. Like you had legal rights, if you will, Aaron. You had the grounds to persecute this guy, to go after this guy, but you decided, no, I'm going to submit this. I'm going to lay it down, even though I have the right, quote unquote, right to do it. Is it going to serve me in the end?
Well, you did bring up another part of the story, which is I did address it with the authorities.
Uh-huh.
So I did submit all the paperwork, because I wasn't the only person that he took.
Yeah, sure.
This woman, 1.1 million, $500,000 over here. So we submitted everything to the FBI. Here's the interesting, I call it traumedy. I call it traumedy because it's like, once I start to resolve these things, kind of like I can learn to love and appreciate my parts versus like hating them and resenting them. But 10 years later, when we were on the road trip with my wife after COVID, the FBI agent reached out to me and said, hey, that guy, his real name was Wayne Carswell. He's like, that guy Wayne, he's like, we finally got him and put him in jail. And at that point, it'd become a distant memory. And I kind of was like, actually not kind of, I was grateful for the gift that he taught me to how to learn, because that was a pivotal moment in my life that brought me to my knees to learn how to bring my attention, start to unpack my parts back to myself. How can I come back to myself? And in a lot of ways, I think the world, this generational trauma thing that, is becoming more and more popular in terms of like, oh my gosh, like, okay, maybe things here that I picked up as kids. Maybe there's some ways that I can resolve these things. I don't have to go try to get something to resolve it. Well, I think I can start learning to do that for myself. And it's simpler than we think. The mind wants to make it really complex. Yeah. It's not as hard as we make it. Yeah.
So and that's what, that's where folks can work with you through Inner Alchemy to take that, inner fracture, like you said, and really identify that. And then, you can take the action on that. I think one of the things I love about you, Aaron, is that you're a coach, you hold a mirror, if you will, and you're helping men get they do the work. Because you cannot, sometimes we have people around us that are trying to fix somebody or change somebody. I can't change, right? You can't change you can't fix it. They have to be wanting to do that.
Right. So obviously there's got to be a willingness someone has to have courage, right?
Yes.
Have courage to face them. If you ever studied David R. Hawking's Power versus Force, there's different levels of consciousness. The lowest one is shame, right? Goes guilt, and then there's fear, and then there's anger, right? Anger is a powerful emotion if we use it to push ourselves, motivate ourselves. And then there's courage, and then courage to face your pain and shame is learning how to be with it.
Yes.
But most people don't have been conditioned to get away from it. They don't know how to be with it. So in a lot of ways, having a guide, I call it like guides. I feel like we're all guides in a way, right? Like you've learned certain skill sets. You're good at business. You're good at helping people in organization and teamwork and leadership. You help to guide people that don't have that skill set, right? So what I really help men do, and women too, masculine women, I would say more so than feminine women, but masculine women and men, is how to process their emotions. Because think about it, who taught you how to process your emotions?
No.
But that's how we experience. Think about it, but that's how we experience ourselves. So wouldn't it be helpful to learn that? Like, I mean, I don't know. To me, that's, we spend so much time on other things, but it's like most of us are looking for the experience. We're looking for love. We're looking for safety. We're looking for peace. We're looking for joy, happiness. What if how you're relating to yourself is your key to unlocking your greatest joy? Like you're holding the key.
Yes. Right.
And you're the only one that can actually open it.
Yes. So what I hear you saying, Aaron, is that some guys are like, well, I just want some kind of strategy, but the way I'm going to use the word is a reckoning, if you will, that you're bringing them a reckoning to get through these feelings, identify these feelings so that they can get past the block. Now, I really like how you said it, an experience. Most guys, I know I didn't. I couldn't name more than happy, sad, glad, mad, maybe. I mean, really like going to the extent of the emotions and talking and working, processing through them, like you said, Aaron, and really having, like I said, for me, it's a reckoning, like kind of like getting through this and saying, okay, now I'm unlock that one. Like you said, like, I mean, there's like you said, there's different levels, there's layers there, right? But hey, there's one, right?
Right. So it's every time you learn how to, as a habit, what if you could learn how to bring your attention back to yourself? Now, that might sound kind of like overly simplistic, because there's different parts of you that typically don't want you to go to the deeper parts within yourself. That's why, if I'm like, okay, we start talking about something that's uncomfortable for you, all of a sudden the parts that like you start feeling that stuff, your mind's going to be like, wait a second, let's get away from this. Like, let's talk about something else, or let's do something else, or we don't do that. Like, especially in men in our culture, if you were emotional, it's like the fear is like, I'm going to be weak. Right. There's like a story of like, oh, if I show you my feelings, that means you could use it against me. But where did that belief come from? Right. Like it came from our fathers. It came from our grandfathers. It came from like war. It came from trauma. It came from all this stuff that's no longer happening in this moment. But it did happen. And so because it wasn't processed from the past, we carry it forward. And until someone says, wait a second, I have the courage to address this and learn from it and actually create a different experience internally with it, all of a sudden it releases itself. And now you have another piece of yourself back.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And before we were recording, I was telling you, I saw you did a Facebook post and you had your son Ezra on your chest and you're talking and you're so calmly and they're talking about this and how you're showing up now as a father. And talk a little bit about, I mean, just, the energy is different. And it was beautiful, by the way. I really appreciate that. And so you just shared some great wisdom there. But it's you've really created a new legacy. I see, Aaron, in the way that you're showing up and leading really from love, from abundance. And being a blessing and serving so many people now.
Yeah, so because of my trauma, and I think a lot of us, every human being on the planet, because of the negative experiences they've gone through, actually we all build resources to overcome that. Like it's
Mhm.
almost it's a beautiful thing to notice. Like Dave, like if we were sitting here and we had more time and I start asking you questions about stuff,
Yes.
you've created a lot of amazing things because of your pain.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have all these resources maybe in business and things of that nature, but maybe in health or like relationships you might have
Mhm.
neglected a bit. So the key is
Yes.
to know that you have resources and learn how to
Mhm.
bring them to the areas where typically we avoid or we don't address. Now,
Mhm.
you mentioned my son. So my son, even there's a great book. It's actually right here on my desk. It talks about, it says why love matters. So this book right here
Mm.
talks about like the science of what we're talking about, which is even in the belly, like before
Mhm.
Ezra was even born. Okay, first trimester. We don't remember that typically. I can't remember the first trimester. I don't know if you can, but
No.
like first first trimester when he's been conceived, he's determining our baby if whether or not is it safe to go into the world or do I need to protect myself.
Mhm.
Now that isn't determined on him, that's determined on his environment. That's his mother. If
Mhm.
his mother,
Mhm.
if my wife is in a dysregulated survival state, how do you think he's going to feel?
Yeah. It's gonna go right to him.
Right. So when he was born, we did an at-home birth. We didn't do it in a hospital. We
Mhm.
didn't do any,
Mm.
vaccines. And I'm not saying anything like against what people, believe in, but we did it in a very natural setting,
Holistic way, yeah.
a
Mhm.
holistic way. And I mean, I got to tell you, this kid, we call him, my nickname for him is Easy E. That was our declaration. He's just gonna be easy. Now he does cry. Obviously, he's a
Sure.
baby, but I would say if his needs are met, he's just looking for safety, and he's just looking like, and he is just absorbing his environment. So
Mhm.
the key with parenting, what I'm learning is if I don't address it internally, he's
Mhm.
going to show it externally.
Right. Right.
And there's no hiding it. Like
No.
he's a perfect sponge to show me where I'm at. And
Yeah.
the motivation now than more than ever is like it's not just me anymore. It's not just even me and my wife. Like if you want to, take on one of the biggest challenges in your life, I would say, have kids, get married.
Yes, that's for sure. That is for sure, Aaron. Well, I mean, and here's the reality because just use that, it is an indicator. I'm not saying it's the only indicator, but I think, ask people how are they doing in their marriage or how are they doing with their children.
Mm,
Um, and is there a lot of trauma there or not? And you're going to see a level of how healthy the person is. For me, even starting my own business, the reason I delayed that for many years is because I wanted to get healthier. I wanted to have a stronger marriage, and I felt like, hey, if I'm going to go into another realm and I don't have this one done, it's gonna cascade. So the better, like you said, you got healthier, put you in a better place to be a better marriage partner, now a better father, now a better businessman, all of these things. But it's like you got to put your house in order. And I feel like, this is where I think you're so important, Aaron, is if you're trying to do all these things externally at a high level and not going into the foundation, that's not going to make that much. I mean, it'll make some difference, but it's not going to make that much difference to where if we go down to the foundation of who you are and getting that resolved, like you said, am I
mm,
loved? Am I safe? Am I protected? Then, we can go from the inside out instead of the outside in, right?
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. If I don't feel safe in my nervous system, I'm going to be making up a lot of stories, and my parts are going to try to find something externally to calm my nervous system down. That becomes an addiction, in my opinion.
Mm, mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm,
So let's start with the source. Like, let's start with feeling safe in the body. And a lot of us have not been taught how to do that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. So if we can make that a fundamental piece of like, imagine we start doing that internally, the next generation of kids, how are they going to feel if we're feeling
Yes,
safe?
right,
Right.
right.
And if I stop trying to chase safety or get safety and start learning how to be it internally, all of a sudden I don't have to work so hard to try to do all these extra things that are not relevant to really what's most important to my family, to my friends, to my nucleus.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
It starts with me. It starts with you. It starts in the game starts inside out, but the mind wants to make it outside in. That's why
Yes.
the mind is so tricky because
Yeah. I know
it has, yeah.
Aaron, I know we're going long because there's so many good things I know, but we're
Yeah.
getting close to the end of the podcast, and
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing so many great points here. We've covered a lot today. I have a question here. One more question is before we're getting close to wrapping up. But what would you say for the man right now who's really hiding in his own life, if you will?
Mm.
What would you challenge him in this moment? You know, that hey, you're hiding back.
Yeah.
What would you
No,
challenge you?
yeah, it's such a great question. So the wounded masculine, I don't think it's talked about a lot. Well, maybe it is a little bit, but wounded masculine, wounded feminine. But so many men, right? We call it the lone wolf syndrome in my men's group. Like I
Mm-hmm.
got to do it by myself. So going back to the conversation of the opposite of addiction is connection. Okay. So my wife and I have a retreat center called Rebirth. It's in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. We're in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Beautiful place. We do all kinds of transformational work there. But we just formed a men's group last couple weeks ago. And why did we form a men's group? So men could come together, connect, and have a safe space to be what? To be honest, to share the truth, to talk about the frustrations, to talk about our feelings and emotions, not from a place of victim, like, oh, I'm a victim. It's like, no, like this is what I'm experiencing so we can release it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in the power of community. There's something in the power of a brotherhood and a sisterhood when we hold each other and we can support one another authentically, not even like I need to fix you. It's more like
Yeah.
let me just be with you so you can move through this experience and let you know you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like that's
Absolutely. That's so
you know what I'm
important.
saying? Like we're not your challenges, your feelings and sensations and experiences are very similar to mine. They're just wrapped up in a different story.
Mm-hmm.
So can we be honest about it, unpack it, so then we can come back to the moment and actually go into creating what we truly desire, what we're worthy of. But it's hard to do that if we're constantly being pulled back into the past and trying to get away from the past. See what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
let's release that, let it go, learn how to do that as a group. And so the short answer to your question is search out people that you admire, resonate with, find groups of men that
Yeah.
you can trust and start to learn how to just connect
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and just like that's what I did when I went to the recovery rooms. I thought I was all by myself, and then I sat in a room with people that had similar addictions, and I'm like, holy fuck, these are my people. Like it's like they know exactly where I'm at because they're going through the same shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we want, no, I agree with you. In today's world of, I could solve pseudo connection because we have all these things, electronic connection, but it's really
Mm,
not truly true connection, like you're saying, Aaron. Like you and
mhm.
I showed up month after month in person. I mean, we were online too, but we had different multiple modes of connection. And,
Right.
and to me, having a retreat and experience is super powerful. So if anybody has not gone on,
Mm,
something like that, I highly recommend it. And Aaron, we're going to put links into the show notes so folks can follow up with you about how they can
cool.
get plugged into your community or work with you. So if you're listening here, please check out the show notes and also leave any comments you have. We'll make sure Aaron gets them so that way he can respond and follow up with you guys have any questions or feedback on any of the things we've talked about here. But Aaron, as we're wrapping up the podcast, is there, I asked you my question, but I want to give you the opportunity. If there's anything else that you wanted to share, key takeaways or thoughts or something as folks are listening in today, and they're like, man, this Aaron guy, he's covered a lot of stuff, and that you would want them just to walk away listening from this podcast, something that they should just internalize, something action that they should take. What would you just want to impart, Aaron, if nothing else, at here as we wrap up the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing, what I'm even just continuously
Mm,
working towards is to being, this authentic expression. And I
mm-hmm.
believe we're all
expressions of the divine.
Yeah.
The thing that gets in the way is our humanness.
Mm.
And if we can learn to love and accept the humanness of ourselves,
Yep.
then and how do you do that? You do that with your consciousness. You do that with your loving awareness. We all have it.
Mm-hmm.
All have it, and no one can take that away from you. So the key is to learn how to bring that awareness and attention and learn how to do that as a habit, and actually clear out the sensations and stories that are in a lot of ways not even yours. Because then if you do that,
you can leave that baggage, right? Leave that baggage.
And let it go and let it be, and then all of a sudden you just become more free, and you become more of who you truly are, and you can express yourself authentically. And a lot of us, that's all we're waiting for. We're just waiting for each other and for ourselves just to wake up to the fact that, like, we are the ones. You are the one you're looking for.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for just coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. I hope this is a little different than we normally cover on the Business Roundtable podcast, but here's the reality. You're going to be a much better person overall in business and every part of life if you follow the advice and the guidance that Aaron is providing you today, and be free of the guilt and the shame and all this baggage that you don't need to carry with you. Be free. I mean, that is fantastic and very much needed in today's world, Aaron.
Yeah, I appreciate you, David, even opening up this conversation, right, to more people, to help people like start to realize, like, if you could give yourself what you're looking for, you don't have to work so hard to strive and deplete yourself to get it. That's the key. Yeah. So
thank you for being on the podcast, Aaron.
I appreciate you. Yeah, man. Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys all listening in. Of course, we really appreciate when you guys share the podcast, like and subscribe, leave a comment or review. It really means a lot. It helps us reach more listeners and helps make the world a little better place today. And again, on behalf of Aaron and myself, we really appreciate you being on the Business Roundtable podcast. Come back again to the next episode. Until then, be well. Take good care. Thanks everybody for listening in today.
So long, everybody.